Welcome to Lecture 24 of our series, where we dive into one of Plato's most thought-provoking and challenging dialogues, the Parmenides. This dialogue stands out as a critical examination of Plato's theory of forms, which we explored in previous lectures. Today, we will analyze how Parmenides raises fundamental objections to the coherence of the theory of forms, primarily through the third-man argument and the separation problem between forms and particulars. To fully grasp the complexity of the Parmenides and its significance in Plato's philosophical evolution, I highly encourage you to read the Parmenides and revisit critical dialogues like the Republic, Phaedo, and Sophist. These texts offer an essential context for understanding Plato's metaphysical framework and his attempts to address the challenges presented in Parmenides. Reading these primary sources will give you a deeper understanding of the nuances in Plato's thought, mainly how his ideas evolved in response to these critiques. As always, while engaging with these dialogues can be time-consuming, the investment will reward you with a richer and more nuanced understanding of Plato's dialectical method. These texts will help you explore whether Plato's theory of forms can withstand the challenges posed by Parmenides' critiques and what that means for our broader understanding of metaphysical principles. By critically engaging with the Parmenides and related dialogues, you will deepen your understanding of Plato's thought, but also hone your ability to engage in philosophical inquiry. Let's embark on this exploration of one of Plato's most fascinating intellectual exercises.
Lecture 24, The Parmenides, Challenges to the Theory of Forms. Welcome, everyone, to Lecture 24 of our ongoing exploration of Plato's dialogues. Today, we turn to one of Plato's most challenging and philosophically dense works, Parmenides. This dialogue stands out for its direct critique of the theory of forms, a theory central to Plato's metaphysics and epistemology. Our goal today is to critically examine the Parmenides, analyze its arguments, and explore the implications these challenges pose for the theory of forms. By the end of this lecture, we should have a clearer understanding of the dialogue's content and why it has remained such an essential and controversial work in the history of philosophy. The theory of forms. A quick recap. Before diving into Parmenides, it's crucial to review Plato's theory of forms. According to this theory, there exists a realm of ideal forms, or abstract entities, such as beauty, justice, and equality, that transcend the material world. These forms are the perfect and immutable versions of concepts we encounter in the world. For example, all beautiful objects partake in the form of beauty, and it is through this participation that they are considered beautiful. Republic, 507b, 509c. The theory of forms underpins Plato's dualistic view of reality, the sensible world, where change occurs, and the intelligible world, where eternal truths reside. For Plato, knowledge is only possible through grasping the eternal truths of these forms. Our experience of the material world, by contrast, is limited to opinion or belief because it involves imperfect, changing particulars. The theory of forms thus serves as the foundation for Plato's theory of knowledge, where true knowledge, episteme, is distinguished from mere opinion, doxa, Phaedo, 73e, 75. Setting the stage for Parmenides. The Parmenides dialogue is unique among Plato's works for its portrayal of a young Socrates discussing his developing ideas about forms with Parmenides and Zeno. Parmenides, a philosopher of monism who argued that all reality is one and indivisible, serves as a foil to Socrates' evolving thoughts on multiplicity and participation in the realm of forms. Zeno, Parmenides' student, presents paradoxes designed to challenge the coherence of plurality. Parmenides, 127a, 128a. As the discussion progresses, Parmenides begins to critique Socrates' ideas on the theory of forms, and his arguments shape much of the dialogue. This encounter between Socrates and Parmenides can be seen as a pivotal moment in Plato's philosophical development. While Parmenides' critique exposes weaknesses in the theory of forms, it also functions as a dialectical exercise, pushing Socrates and Plato's readers to refine their understanding of the nature of reality. The first challenge: participation and the third man. Argument. One of the most famous critiques in Parmenides is the third man argument, which arises when Parmenides questions how particular objects participate in forms. If a particular thing, say a beautiful object, is beautiful because it participates in the form of beauty, must there not be another form that explains both the object and the original form of beauty? This reasoning leads to an infinite regress. If each form requires another form to explain the relationship between the particular and the universal, we are left with an endless chain of forms. Parmenides, 132a, 133a. This critique strikes at the heart of the theory of forms because it questions the very mechanism of participation. Plato's theory depends on the idea that forms provide the ultimate explanation for the qualities of particular objects. However, Parmenides suggests that the concept of participation itself may be incoherent, or at least insufficiently explained. If the forms can't explain how they relate to particular things, their role as explanatory principles is undermined. The problem of separation. Parmenides' next critique concerns the separation between the world of forms and the physical world. In Plato's metaphysics, the forms exist in a realm distinct from the material world. However, Parmenides pushes Socrates by asking how these separated forms can have any bearing on the objects in the physical world. If the forms are entirely separate, how can they cause or inform anything about the changing material world? How can there be a relationship between something so utterly transcendent and the particulars we experience in our everyday lives? Parmenides, 133d, 134e. This critique forces us to confront a dilemma. If the forms are entirely separate from the world of particulars, they seem irrelevant to explaining anything about the objects we encounter. But if the forms are somehow tied to the material world, they lose their transcendent, unchanging status, the very characteristics that make them objects of true knowledge in Plato's epistemology. The forms of negative entities. Another provocative critique raised by Parmenides concerns whether there are forms for things we consider undesirable or negative. If there is a form of beauty, is there also a form of ugliness? Is there a form for trivial or mundane things like hair or dirt? This question challenges the notion that the forms are limited to ideal entities like beauty, justice, or goodness. Parmenides, 130b. If we accept that the theory of forms must account for all aspects of reality, then it must also account for negative or trivial things. But this poses a problem. How can there be a perfect, unchanging form of imperfection? If the realm of forms includes both good and bad, desirable and undesirable, it seems to lose its role as a realm of perfect ideals. The problem of knowledge. Parmenides' critique also extends into epistemology. If the forms are completely separate from the material world, how can we have any knowledge of them? For Plato, true knowledge comes from understanding the forms. Yet if these forms are utterly beyond our sensory experience, how can we ever come to know them? This epistemological problem raises serious doubts about Plato's ability to bridge the gap between the world of forms and the world of experience. Parmenides, 134d, 135a. This brings us to an essential philosophical question. What does it mean to know something? If the forms are unknowable in principle, Plato's theory of knowledge collapses, leaving us with only opinion about the material world. Yet if the forms are knowable, they must somehow be related to the world of experience, which would undermine their transcendence. A dialectical exercise, the second part of Parmenides. The second half of the Parmenides dialogue takes an even more puzzling turn. Parmenides engages in a dialectical exercise with a young Socrates, exploring various hypotheses about the nature of the one and the many. This section, often called the exercise of dialectic, is notoriously difficult, and its meaning has been the subject of much scholarly debate. Parmenides, 137-166c. One interpretation of this section is that Plato uses it to demonstrate the limitations of logical reasoning and the difficulties inherent in any metaphysical system. By leading Socrates through a series of paradoxes, Parmenides shows that even the most carefully constructed theory will eventually encounter problems when pushed to its logical extremes. This exercise also serves as a philosophical training ground. Parmenides guides Socrates through the process of dialectical reasoning, pushing him to confront the complexities and contradictions that arise when we attempt to think deeply about the nature of reality. This section reinforces Plato's belief in the importance of dialectic as a method of inquiry, suggesting that even the theory of forms must be subject to rigorous questioning. Reinterpretations of the Parmenides. Over the centuries, philosophers have offered various interpretations of the Parmenides dialogue. Some, like Aristotle, saw it as a devastating critique of the theory of forms. Others, however, view it as a necessary step in the evolution of Plato's thought. According to this latter view, Parmenides doesn't dismantle the theory of forms, but rather points to its limitations and encourages deeper reflection. In later dialogues like the Sophist, Plato revisits some of the issues raised in Parmenides and offers a more nuanced account of the relationship between the forms and the material world. He introduces the notion of koinonia, the participation of forms in one another, which allows for a more dynamic interplay between the world of forms and the world of particulars, Sophist 251d, 252e. This suggests that Plato took the critiques of Parmenides seriously and sought to address them in his later works. The philosophical value of self-critique. One of the most remarkable aspects of Parmenides is Plato's willingness to engage in self-critique. Through the character of Parmenides, Plato allows his own theory of forms to be subjected to rigorous criticism. This act of self-critique is rare in philosophical literature and speaks to Plato's intellectual humility and commitment to the pursuit of truth. By raising these critiques, Plato invites his readers to think more deeply about the problems inherent in any metaphysical system. Rather than presenting the theory of forms as an unassailable doctrine, Plato demonstrates that philosophy is a process of questioning and refinement. The Parmenides dialogue thus serves as both a critique and a call for further philosophical investigation. Conclusion: the enduring legacy of Parmenides. In conclusion, Parmenides remains one of Plato's most challenging and thought-provoking dialogues. Its critique of the theory of forms forces us to confront the limitations of metaphysical systems and encourages us to engage in dialectical inquiry. While the dialogue raises serious questions about the coherence of the theory of forms, it also serves as a catalyst for deeper philosophical reflection. The value of Parmenides lies not only in its critique, but also in its role as a philosophical exercise in humility. Plato understood that even the most cherished ideas must be subjected to scrutiny, and it is through this process of questioning and refinement that we move closer to understanding the nature of reality, knowledge, and existence. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to our discussion on how these critiques might inform our broader understanding of Plato's philosophical system.